Esteban Whitmore stepped out of his private car, eyes shaded behind dark lenses, tailored navy suit crisp despite the southern humidity. He didn't smile. He never did at places like this. "Welcome to Sea Haven, Mr. Whitmore," the concierge greeted, a bit too cheerfully. "We've prepared your suite and passed your schedule to the private events coordinator. There's also a welcome reception this afternoon. We've included it in your itinerary, sir." Esteban gave a nod, clipped and distant. "Good. No distractions. I'll need the boardroom prepped by 9 a.m. tomorrow." As he strode through the glass doors into the resort's lobby, polished stone and fresh orchids all around, there was an elegance to him, but no warmth. Staff turned their heads slightly as he passed. Some recognized him. Esteban Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Capital, the man who made fortunes rise and fall with a phone call. A self-made billionaire who now spent more time at 30,000 feet than at sea level. On the outside, he had it all: private jets, gala invitations. The kind of life most people only saw through magazine pages. But on the inside, there was just space. He entered the elevator alone. "I didn't come here to socialize. I came here to close the deal and leave." The soft ding of the doors opening broke his thoughts. A bellhop handed him a small gold-embossed envelope. "For the pre-dinner reception, sir." Esteban opened it absently. A handwritten note read, "Sunset welcome at the Marigold Pavilion. Wedding guests only." He frowned. Wedding? But before he could question it, his phone buzzed. A message from Hamza, his assistant. "Running late. Flight delay. I'll meet you in the morning. All your materials are in the suite." Esteban glanced at the time. 6:42 p.m. He didn't care about a wedding, but a quiet space with a drink and a view of the water sounded better than sitting alone in the suite. Besides, networking in unexpected places sometimes turned out useful. He straightened his collar and made his way to the Marigold Pavilion. The sun was beginning to dip, casting the entire sky in a mix of rose gold and peach. The pavilion glowed. Strings of lights dangled between trees. Guests in soft linens and pastels laughed over champagne glasses. A quartet played in the corner. It was beautiful, peaceful. He didn't recognize anyone, but no one questioned his presence either. He walked further inside, looking for a place to stand where no one would ask him anything. And then he saw her. Across the pavilion, near a white column wrapped in greenery, stood a woman in a soft, ocean blue dress. Her hair was swept into a loose updo, curls falling naturally, her expression warm yet distant, like someone trying to be present in a place she didn't quite belong. Esteban froze. It was Camille. His chest tightened in a way he hadn't felt in years. 7 years. He hadn't seen her since New York, the apartment, the last late-night phone call, the moment he made the decision that would change both their lives. He had told himself she had moved on, that she had probably married someone who gave her what he couldn't, that she had forgotten him entirely. But there she was, and beside her, 2 boys. Esteban's breath caught. They were maybe 6 or 7. Both had tousled dark hair and deep, inquisitive brown eyes. Identical. And those eyes, they were his. Camille bent to adjust one boy's collar, smiling gently. The other tugged at her hand, saying something. She nodded and laughed, but there was tension around her mouth, like someone keeping a secret under layers of grace. He stepped forward, unable to stop himself. But as if sensing him, Camille looked up. Their eyes met. She went still. So did he. The world didn't blur, it sharpened. The music faded, the chatter around them blurred into nothing. All he could hear was the rush of his pulse in his ears. Camille's expression shifted, confusion, shock, then something cold. Her hand tightened slightly around the child's. Esteban opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Camille moved first. She turned quickly, and ushered the boys away with a soft voice he couldn't hear. Within seconds, they disappeared behind a row of decorative curtains and into the private family suite near the back of the pavilion. Esteban stood there, jaw clenched, heart thudding. He had no idea whose wedding this was. But that didn't matter anymore. He hadn't just stumbled into a stranger's celebration. He had walked straight into the past he had buried and pretended didn't exist. And now, it was standing in front of him, with two little boys who looked exactly like he did at their age. He stayed outside the suite for several minutes, hands in fists, trying to calm the storm now brewing inside his chest. Why didn't she tell me? Are they... No, it's not possible. Is it? He turned away slowly, his mind already spiraling. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thoughts matter to me either way. He had closed billion-dollar deals with less adrenaline than this. As he walked away, a photographer hired for the wedding captured a candid shot of him, a man standing in a sea of fairy lights, dressed for business, but caught in emotion. Just one photo. Posted later that night by a guest who didn't know who he was. But the internet would. And by morning, the entire resort and beyond would be whispering the same question. Who is the stranger at the wedding? And why does he look like the twins' father? Camille shut the door to the bridal suite and leaned against it, her breath catching like she'd run a mile. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it echoing in her ears. The twins sat quietly on the velvet bench inside, sensing the shift in her mood. Aiden tilted his head. Mom? Who was that man? Camille forced a smile, the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes. Just someone I used to know. But the truth trembled behind her words like a pane of glass under pressure. She turned away and moved toward the makeup table, pretending to fix the hairpins in her loosely curled updo. Her hands, however, weren't steady. That face, his face, still hung in her mind like a sudden storm on a clear day. Esteban, after all these years, of all places, of all moments, he walked into this wedding like it was a casual Tuesday. He hadn't changed much, same sharp jawline, same posture and crew, like he owned every space he walked into. But there was something new, too, a heaviness in his eyes, like he wasn't sleeping well, like life had taken just enough from him to humble the man who once thought emotions were optional. Camille closed her eyes and exhaled through her nose. She couldn't think like this. Not now. This weekend wasn't about him. It was about her cousin's wedding, about the boys having their first beach trip since Christmas, about peace, and yet there was no peace now. Behind her, the boys whispered to each other. Did you see his eyes? Noah asked, nudging his brother. Aiden nodded. They looked like ours. Camille's chest tightened. She turned quickly. Okay, you two, go wash up for dinner. Remember, we're sitting with the cousins, and I don't want any complaining about the green beans, okay? The boys exchanged glances but obeyed, trotting off to the bathroom with their usual clumsy coordination. When the door shut behind them, Camille gripped the edge of the table and looked at herself in the mirror. 7 years. That's how long it had been since she last saw Esteban Whitmore. Back then, they were two ambitious nobodies in a city that didn't slow down for love. She'd been working 12-hour shifts at a bakery uptown, juggling baking classes at night. He was a rising financial analyst with a 1,000-yard stare and a voice that could talk investors out of their own money. Their connection was instant, intense but fragile, like sugar glass. They had shared late nights, spontaneous road trips, whispered dreams under city lights. She had asked him once in the quiet lull after a rainstorm, "Do you think we could ever have a family someday?" He didn't pause. Not now, but maybe someday, with you. Camille hadn't needed anything else. She believed him. Until one morning he left for a work trip and never came back. No message. No goodbye. Just gone. She waited. Days turned to weeks. His number disconnected. His email bounced back. She searched every way she could, humiliated herself reaching out to his office, but nothing. And then the test turned positive. Camille had stared at the 2 lines on that stick for an entire hour, wondering if her heart could physically split in half. Now, 7 years later, he walks into a wedding reception, a wedding she wasn't even supposed to attend until 2 weeks ago, and sees the boys for the first time. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady her breath. The door creaked open, and Simone stepped in, her heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor. "Hey," she said, closing the door behind her. "You okay?" "You disappeared from the tent like someone hit a fire alarm." Camille hesitated. "He's here." Simone blinked. "He?" She didn't need to ask who. The tone in Camille's voice said it all. "You saw him?" Camille nodded once. "He walked into the wrong wedding. I don't even know if he realized it until he saw me." "And the boys?" Simone's eyes widened, and then she slowly sank into the armchair by the window. "Well, that's a twist." Camille gave a dry laugh. "That's one word for it." "What did he say?" "Nothing. Just stared. I left." Simone folded her arms. "And now? I don't know." Camille turned back toward the mirror, but her reflection looked like someone else's life. "Do I act like it didn't happen? Do I confront him? What if he's only here for the weekend? What if he wants to talk?" Simone tilted her head. "And if he does?" Camille swallowed hard. "I don't know what I'd say." She looked over at the bathroom door. The boys were laughing about something now, probably toothpaste related. They didn't know the weight that had just re-entered her life. "I raised them, Simone. I held them through fevers, made peanut butter sandwiches with barely any sleep, answered every question about where their dad was with half-truths and bedtime stories." Simone's voice softened. "You did all of it, and beautifully." Camille blinked back the sting in her eyes. "Now he just walks back in. He doesn't get to do that. Not without—" She trailed off. Simone leaned forward. "Not without earning it." A knock came at the door. Camille stiffened. Simone stood first, stepping over. She opened it just a few inches, then turned back. "It's him." Camille's stomach flipped. "Do you want me to—" It's okay." Simone gave her a careful look, then nodded and stepped aside. Esteban stood in the hallway. No suit jacket, just the white shirt sleeves rolled slightly. He looked tired, cautious. "Camille," he said quietly. She didn't move. "You shouldn't be here." "I know." Silence hung in the air like a breath that wouldn't exhale. "I didn't plan this," he said. "The wedding, I mean. It was a mix-up. They gave me the wrong invite. I thought it was a business reception." Camille crossed her arms. "And you just walked in, like nothing happened." "I didn't expect you. I didn't even know—" He stopped himself, voice dropping. "Camille, are they—" "You don't get to ask that." Her voice wavered, but she held steady. Esteban looked down. "You're right." He took a breath. "I'm not here to fix everything in one conversation, but I saw them, and I saw you, and I can't leave without talking to you." Camille's fingers gripped the edge of the table again. "Tomorrow," she said. "After breakfast, the cafe on the edge of the courtyard. If you're still here." "I'll be there," Esteban said. He turned to leave, then paused. "They're beautiful. The boys. You did a good job." Camille didn't respond. She waited until his footsteps faded. Then she sat down, staring out the window, the night pressing against the glass. She had survived 7 years without him. But tomorrow, she'd have to face everything she never said. The cafe at Sea Haven opened just after sunrise, its whitewashed doors swinging out to a quiet stone courtyard fringed with morning glories and sleepy palms. A soft breeze stirred linen napkins and carried the scent of fresh-baked scones and sea salt. It was early enough that only 2 tables were occupied, one by an older couple sipping espresso in silence, the other by Esteban Whitmore. He was already there, no assistant, no phone in hand, just a black coffee, half sipped and going cold. He checked the time again. 7:58. Every part of him itched to stand, to pace, to calculate an outcome. But this wasn't a negotiation. This wasn't numbers and mergers and capital gains. This was Camille. He looked down at his watch. Not because he needed to, but because it gave his fingers something to do. Then, just as the minute turned to 8 o'clock, she walked into the courtyard. She wasn't dressed up, no heels, no effort to impress, just a light beige sweater, jeans, and her hair pulled back in a loose knot. Simple, beautiful, steady. Esteban stood immediately, unsure whether to smile. He didn't. Camille didn't either. "I wasn't sure if you'd come," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "You think I run from things?" "No," he said quietly. "That's what I did." A pause. She sat down across from him without a word. The chair scraped gently on the stone. A waitress approached, too chipper for the mood. Camille ordered tea. Esteban didn't order anything more. When the waitress left, the silence returned. Heavier this time. Esteban leaned forward, elbows on the table, hands folded. "I owe you more than an apology, I know that." Camille didn't blink. And yet here we are, 7 years later, starting with 1. He let that land. There was no defense, no excuse, only history. "I didn't know," he said. "About them." "Of course you didn't," she replied, tone tight. "You disappeared before I ever had the chance to tell you." His eyes dropped. "I made a mistake. 1,000 probably. But when I left, it wasn't because I didn't care." Her jaw tensed. "Then why?" she asked. Esteban looked up, his voice lower now, more raw. "Because I was scared. Because I thought choosing ambition meant sacrifice. Because I told myself I'd come back when I made it, when I was enough." Camille laughed, not cruel, just tired. "You don't get to rewrite it now. You left. Full stop. No goodbye, no explanation. Just silence." "I know." She shook her head, eyes suddenly glossy. "You don't know. You don't know what it felt like to wonder if I'd made you up. If I dreamed it all. The way you looked at me, the way you held me, the things you said. You don't know what it's like to go to your first prenatal appointment alone, or to sit up at 2 a.m. with 2 sick toddlers and no one to call." Esteban didn't move. His knuckles were white around the edge of his cup. "You're right," he said. "I don't know, but I want to." Camille scoffed. "It's a little late for wanting, isn't it?" "I didn't come here expecting a second chance," he said quietly. "I came because I saw their faces and realized I'd missed 7 years of something I didn't even know I was supposed to be part of." She was quiet. The tea arrived. Neither of them touched it. "I didn't know how to find you," he added. Camille looked up sharply. "You didn't try." He nodded slowly. "That's the truth." A long breath passed between them. Camille's eyes drifted toward the courtyard garden, where 2 butterflies hovered near the hydrangeas. Her voice dropped. "The boys, they've never asked much. They just know their dad isn't around. I told them you lived far away, that sometimes adults don't stay together, that it wasn't their fault." Esteban swallowed hard. "Do they know who I am?" She turned back to him. "Not yet. They just think you're someone from my past, which is technically true." He exhaled. "Can I see them?" She paused. "I don't know." "They deserve to know," he said. Camille's eyes met his, steady, unreadable, And what exactly do you want from them, Esteban? To visit? To write checks? To play dad on weekends? No, he said firmly. I don't want to play anything. I want to be there. Really. For them. For you. A beat passed. Then she asked softly, "Why now?" He answered with no hesitation. Because when I saw them, everything else stopped mattering. Because I've spent years building a life I can barely stand to be in. Because I was wrong. Camille's lips trembled for a second, then steadied. You walked away once, without looking back. How do I know you won't do it again? You don't, he said honestly. But I'm here, and I'm not leaving. Not this time. She sat back slowly, arms crossed again. It's not that simple. I know, he said. So make it complicated. I'll still be here. They sat in silence again. This time it was fuller, not empty, not angry, just full of things unsaid. The butterflies outside had flown away. Camille finally reached for her tea. The boys like the beach and waffles, and they fight over who gets to crack the eggs when we bake. Esteban's lips almost curved. Do they like chocolate chips? Noah does. Aiden thinks it's too sweet. That's definitely me, Esteban said without thinking. Camille's eyes lingered on him. They're good boys, she said. Kind, smart. So much like you, it scares me sometimes. I'd like to meet them, he said, voice quiet. When you're ready. Camille didn't answer right away. She just sipped her tea, eyes thoughtful. Then she said, We're going to the turtle release event this afternoon, at the north end of the beach. It's open to the resort. You could be there, from a distance. Esteban nodded. I will. She stood, brushing invisible lint from her sweater. Don't mistake that for permission, she added. I won't. And don't bring gifts. Don't bribe them with toys. I won't. Camille took one last look at him. There was no smile, but there was something softer. Maybe not trust, but the space where trust might one day grow again. She turned and walked away. Esteban stayed behind, eyes on the half-full cup of coffee in front of him. 7 years ago, he'd walked away from the woman he loved, thinking he was chasing something more important. Now, all he wanted was to earn his way back into that world he had left behind, even if it meant watching from a distance. For now. The sun hung low over the horizon, casting golden streaks across the shoreline where dozens of guests had gathered for the resort's sea turtle release, a family-friendly event held just before dusk on the north end of Hilton Head. Laughter floated in the warm breeze, mingling with the sound of children digging in the sand and waves lapping gently at the shore. Camille walked hand in hand with Aiden and Noah, their small feet kicking up sand as they ran ahead, chattering about which turtle would make it to the water first. Mine's going to win, Aiden declared confidently, pointing at the largest turtle slowly crawling toward the waves. No way, Noah said. The little one's faster. Watch Camille smiled faintly, but kept scanning the crowd, not because she wanted to find him, but because she already knew he was there. She spotted him by the lifeguard stand, just beyond the line of rope separating the crowd from the release zone. Esteban stood alone, sleeves rolled, hands in his pockets, eyes locked on the children as if they were the only ones on the beach. He didn't wave. He didn't move. But she knew he saw them, and she knew what was running through his mind, because it had been running through hers for years. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thoughts matter to me either way. They were his. Even without confirmation, without science or tests or paperwork, he knew. Camille turned back to her boys. Stay where I can see you, okay? Yes, Mommy, they said in unison and bolted toward the edge of the crowd, their sandals half buried in the warm sand. From her periphery, she saw Simone approaching, holding 2 bottles of water and her ever-present oversized beach bag. "Well," Simone said under her breath, handing her one, "there's your ghost, standing tall in linen and gilt." Camille sighed. "He's not hiding." "No," Simone said. "That's what makes it worse. Men like him usually vanish again. This one's waiting." Camille took a sip, letting the silence hang. "You want my advice?" Simone added. "Don't let him get too close. Not yet." Camille's voice was quiet. "He asked to meet them. And you said?" "Not yet." "Good." Simone stepped back, scanning the crowd. "Because the minute you let him in, the boys will start asking questions. And those answers can't be undone." Camille nodded, eyes never leaving her children. "I know." Then Noah called out, waving wildly, "Mom, look, it's swimming." She walked closer and crouched beside them as the little turtle paddled its way into the surf, disappearing into the vastness of the ocean. The crowd clapped. Camille wrapped an arm around each boy, pulling them in gently. "That one's a fighter," she said, smiling. Behind her, Esteban watched every moment. His chest ached in ways that had nothing to do with business or ego or pride. He was watching his sons, their voices, their laughter, their tiny arguments and easy forgiveness. It was a whole life that had happened without him. He took one slow step forward, careful not to draw attention, then another. He stopped a few feet behind them, just outside their awareness. Camille turned, sensing him. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then Aiden noticed. "Mom," he whispered, "that's the man from yesterday." Noah turned. "He's here again." Camille stood slowly, eyes steady. Esteban looked at her, then down at the boys, his voice soft but clear. "Hi, I didn't mean to intrude, I just wanted to see the release." The boys stared at him, curiosity blooming across their faces. Aiden stepped a little closer. "Do we know you?" he asked. Camille knelt beside them, her voice calm. "This is someone Mommy used to know, a long time ago." "Did you work at the bakery?" Noah asked. Esteban smiled gently. "Number." "But I know your mom's baking is the best in the world." The boys exchanged a look, that perfect mix of suspicion and wonder only children could hold. "You sound like us," Aiden said. Camille's heart stuttered. Esteban crouched slightly, not close, but near enough. "Yeah," he said carefully. "I guess I do." The silence stretched between them. Camille could feel it tightening. Then, without prompting, Aiden offered, "Do you want to see the turtles? There's another one coming." Esteban looked at Camille, silently asking. She gave the slightest nod. And just like that, he walked beside his sons for the first time in his life. They pointed out the different shells, explained how the volunteers helped guide them to the water, and argued again about which one was faster. Esteban didn't correct. He didn't lead. He just listened, fully, without his phone, without interruption. Camille stood back, arms crossed, watching. Simone returned at her side quietly. "You're letting him in," she said. Camille didn't reply. "I get it," Simone added. "I do, but be careful, Cam. Hearts don't rebuild the same way twice." "I know," Camille said softly. "But maybe the boys deserve a chance to see who he is, not who he was." As the last turtle slid into the ocean and the crowd began to cheer, Aiden ran back toward Camille, tugging at her hand. "Can we stay a little longer?" He said he's never seen this before. Camille looked down into her son's hopeful eyes. She nodded. Behind them, Esteban stood awkwardly to the side, not pushing, just waiting. Not for permission, for acceptance. Camille met his gaze. "I'll pack us a picnic tomorrow," she said. "We usually go to the dunes around noon." Esteban's expression shifted, the smallest flicker of something unspoken passing through his eyes. "I'll be there," he said. Then she turned back to the boys, and for the first time in 7 years, They walked together down the shoreline, not as a family yet, but not strangers anymore either. The ocean kept rolling in, and for the first time, Esteban felt like maybe he could learn how to stay. The dunes at Sea Haven sat like soft waves of sand above the shoreline, where the wind carried the scent of sea oats and salt, and the sound of seagulls echoed like whispers from the sky. Noon light shimmered across the water, dancing in silver flecks. Camille laid out a checkered blanket beneath a small patch of shade, the kind of spot she would have found alone with the boys, until now. Aiden and Noah were already digging nearby with plastic shovels, chasing imaginary treasure beneath the sand. She watched them, her hand steady as she unpacked fruit slices, sandwiches, and chocolate chip cookies the boys had helped bake that morning. She hadn't told them Esteban would be joining, because part of her still wasn't sure he would. But at exactly 12:03, she heard the familiar crunch of footsteps behind her. She turned. Esteban stood there in a soft linen shirt, sleeves rolled, his hair tousled slightly by the breeze. No phone, no portfolio, just a nervous man carrying a small brown paper bag. He offered a quiet smile. "I wasn't sure what to bring, so I grabbed pastries from the cafe." Camille took the bag, her fingers brushing his by accident. She pulled back slightly. "Thanks." The silence stretched. He looked out toward the boys. "They seem happy." "They are." He hesitated. "Because of you." She didn't answer. Instead, she turned and called out, "Boys, you hungry?" Aiden jumped up first, sprinting toward the blanket with a huge grin. "I'm starving." Noah followed, sand stuck to his elbows. He paused when he saw Esteban, and then plopped down beside his brother like it was the most natural thing in the world. Camille handed out sandwiches. Esteban remained standing until Camille looked up and gestured. "You can sit." "Thanks," he said, and lowered himself slowly to the edge of the blanket, giving them space. They ate under the warmth of the midday sun, the boys launching into a lively debate about whether pirate ships still existed, while Esteban listened, smiled, and occasionally asked questions. Simple ones. Just enough to make them laugh, just enough to make Camille's heart ache. He was good with them. Not flashy. Not trying too hard. Just there. It was the most dangerous kind of progress, the kind that crept in quietly and made her forget the years in between. After they finished, Aiden tugged at Camille's sleeve. "Can we go to the tide pool? You said we could." Camille looked at Esteban. "It's just down the trail. You mind staying with the stuff?" "I'll hold down the fort," he said with a slight smile. Camille gave him a nod, then stood and followed the boys, who dashed down the narrow path, their voices echoing over the dunes. It wasn't until they were out of sight that Esteban let out a long, slow breath. Camille's presence still hit him like a wave he wasn't quite ready for. Not because she was distant, but because she was still her. Grounded, calm, fierce when she needed to be. And watching her with the boys. That was a kind of beauty he had never deserved. But now, more than anything, he wanted to. He stood and started picking up their empty sandwich wrappers, folding the blanket just enough to keep the wind from tugging it away. A small piece of paper fluttered out of the corner of the picnic basket. He caught it before it blew off. It was a hand-drawn picture. Crayon. Bright colors. Lopsided hearts. In it there were 4 stick figures, 2 small ones in the middle, labeled A and N. On one side, Camille with long hair. On the other side, a taller figure labeled D. Esteban stared at it for a long moment. Then he folded it gently and tucked it back where it came from. The boys came back flushed and damp, holding seashells and pointing at invisible crabs. Camille followed, her hair windblown and eyes soft with sunlight. They all sat for a while, the boys sprawled out beside them, drifting toward post-lunch drowsiness. And then it came, the moment she hadn't wanted to face. The quiet one. The one with no distractions left. She spoke first. They'll ask eventually. Esteban didn't pretend not to understand. I know. Camille's eyes stayed on the horizon. I've avoided it for years, tried to give them just enough of a story to feel safe. I don't want to upend their world. But you already have, she said gently, just by showing up. He nodded. She turned to face him now. If we do this, if you become part of their life, it has to be on their terms. No sudden appearances, no overcompensating. You don't get to rewrite the past by throwing money or time at it. I'm not trying to rewrite it, he said. I'm trying to build something from it, even if I start with nothing. Camille watched him, searching for cracks in the surface. But he wasn't bluffing. He wasn't posturing. He was just here, present. Still, she needed to hear it, needed the words. Why didn't you come back? She asked, voice barely above the breeze. You said you were scared. But we all are. That doesn't explain vanishing. Esteban's gaze dropped. There was a moment, he said slowly, after I got the offer in London, the one that changed everything. I stood outside your apartment. It was raining. I had your favorite pastry in my hand and this stupid idea that I'd show up, kiss you, and you'd come with me. That you'd just drop everything. Camille blinked. You never came inside. I saw your light on. I saw you dancing in the kitchen, alone, laughing at something on the radio, and I thought, maybe you're better off without me. Her breath caught. So I left. A long silence stretched between them, and then, in a voice quieter than a whisper, Camille asked, Do you still think that? Esteban looked at her, really looked at her. No, he said. I've never been more wrong. She stared at him for a long time. Then she stood, brushing sand off her legs. We're going to the bookstore in town tomorrow. They have a story hour. The boys love it. Esteban stood slowly. I'll be there. She gave him a long look. You're doing fine, you know. Even with the peanut butter on my pants? Camille almost laughed. Almost. You'll learn. As the boys ran up to them again, voices high and bright, Camille realized something she hadn't allowed herself to admit until now. She wasn't just watching him show up for them. She was watching him show up for her. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was carrying it all alone. The independent bookstore nestled at the edge of Harbor Town was the kind of place that smelled like cedarwood shelves, old pages, and imagination. Every Tuesday morning they hosted a children's story hour, and Camille had been coming for years, first with a stroller, then with sippy cups, and now with two energetic boys who knew exactly where the blanket circle was and how to claim the best seats. Today, however, was different. Because Esteban was coming. She hadn't told the boys until they were already walking toward the store. Someone's meeting us, she said casually. Is it Ms. Simone? Aiden asked, skipping ahead. No, Camille replied, steady. It's the man from the turtle event. Noah paused mid-step. The one who talks like us? Camille glanced down at him, her heart skipping. Yes, that one. Noah squinted toward the building. Why's he coming? Camille exhaled. Because I thought it might be nice if you got to know him a little better. The boys exchanged a look, not thrilled, not upset, just curious in the way kids are when their world tilts by a degree. Inside, the store was quiet. Children were already settling into the rug, parents sipping coffee at the back. The storyteller, a kind woman named Miss Lila, stood holding a book titled The Boy Who Found the Moon. And then the door opened. Camille turned. Esteban entered, slightly underdressed in jeans and a light pullover, holding a small tote bag that looked out of place on him, until he pulled out 2 new books. "Found these on the staff picks shelf," he said, gently holding them out to Aiden and Noah. "No wrapping paper. Hope that's okay." The boys looked at Camille. She gave a single nod. Aiden took the book, flipping it open. "This one's about sea creatures," he announced. Noah opened his and grinned. "Mine has a spaceship." Camille smiled softly, tension easing by a breath. Esteban didn't try to sit between them. He simply found a spot at the back of the circle, giving the boys their space but close enough that they could look back and see him if they wanted. Miss Lila began reading. Camille sat beside her sons, eyes occasionally drifting toward Esteban. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He laughed when the children laughed. He leaned forward during the big moments, and when the story ended with the boy finding the moon and learning it was just a reflection in the lake, Camille noticed the way Esteban swallowed hard, like something in the story had touched him deeper than he expected. After story time, the children scattered toward the craft table. Camille was packing up when she felt Esteban step beside her. "They liked the books," he said quietly. "They did. They're great kids." She looked at him. "They are." He hesitated. "Is there a right time to tell them?" Camille tightened her grip on the strap of her tote. "There's never a perfect time, but I think it's getting close." He nodded slowly. They moved outside to the patio where the boys were playing tag between the benches. Esteban leaned against the railing, his gaze distant. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what you said, about rewriting the past." Camille turned toward him. "I've spent my whole life chasing permanence," he continued. "Buildings, contracts, wealth, all so I could prove something to myself, that I mattered, that I was in control." Camille stayed silent. "But I'm not," he added. "Not really. Watching them, being around you. It's the first time in years I've felt something real." She looked away, emotions swirling like wind-tossed waves. "And then I get this call last night," he continued. "From Hamza, my assistant. The investors are getting anxious. The London firm wants an answer. They want me back. Immediately." Her chest tightened. "You going?" she asked, almost too casually. "I don't want to," he said. "But if I don't, I risk everything I've built." She turned back to face him, her voice low. "You mean everything you built after walking away from me?" He winced slightly. "Yeah. And now you're asking me to believe you're different? That this isn't temporary?" "I'm not asking you to believe anything yet," he said, voice cracking just a little. "I'm just asking for time to prove it." Camille's eyes searched his face. "Then stay," she said simply. "Don't make this another goodbye." "I'd lose the deal," he admitted. She nodded. "Then you'd know what really matters to you." A silence settled between them, thick with possibility. "Will you judge me if I say I don't know what I'll choose yet?" he asked. Camille looked him in the eye. "Number I'll judge you if you pretend you already have." Esteban exhaled slowly, as if the truth hurt more than he expected. Just then, Noah came running up, cheeks flushed. "Can we get ice cream?" he asked. Esteban glanced at Camille. She nodded. "Sure." Noah turned to Esteban. "You coming too?" Esteban blinked. "If that's okay." Noah shrugged like it was the simplest thing in the world. "I guess so." Camille met Esteban's eyes. "It's a start." They walked together slowly, not hand in hand, not yet, but close enough to feel the warmth, the ache, the questions that still hung in the space between them. Behind them, the bookstore door swung gently shut, leaving only the sound of laughter and the faint echo of a story about a boy who chased the moon and found something even more lasting in its reflection. Neither of them said it out loud, but both knew it. The moon wasn't the goal. The reflection was. The coastal air had cooled by the time they reached the ice cream shop, its pastel sign swinging gently above the boardwalk like a whisper from childhood. Inside, the smell of fresh waffle cones and melting chocolate drifted through the room, sweet and nostalgic. Aiden pressed his face to the glass counter, eyes scanning every swirl and topping as if he were deciphering ancient code. "I want the one with rainbow sprinkles," he declared. "Which one?" Camille asked, laughing softly. "There are 4 with sprinkles." Noah pointed decisively. "The one that looks like it could turn you into a superhero." Camille raised an eyebrow. "That's blue raspberry?" Aiden nodded eagerly. "Superhero flavor." Behind them, Esteban stood quietly, watching the scene unfold like someone pressing their face to the window of a life they'd once left behind. The ease between Camille and the boys, the small rituals, the rhythm of a normal afternoon. He hadn't known what he was missing. Now he couldn't look away. When everyone had their cones and they found a quiet bench outside, Camille sat with the boys while Esteban stood behind them, hands in his pockets, rocking slightly on his heels. A moment passed. Then Camille turned slightly. "You don't have to hover." Esteban blinked. "Sorry, force of habit." She gestured to the empty spot beside her. "Come sit, unless you're scared of getting melted superhero flavor on your shirt." He smiled and joined them, cautious but grateful. The boys were mid-laugh when Aiden suddenly turned serious. "Are you going to stay?" he asked, blue ice cream staining the corner of his mouth. The question hit like a gust of cold air. Esteban looked to Camille, unsure if she wanted him to answer, but she just watched, silent, giving him the space to try. "I'd like to," he said, voice low but steady. "Forever?" Noah asked. Esteban hesitated. "I can't promise forever yet, but I can promise right now. And I don't want to leave again." The boys looked at each other, then at Camille. She met their eyes. "We're figuring it out, together." Aiden considered this for a moment, then nodded. "Okay." And just like that, the conversation shifted. They started talking about their upcoming school projects, something about a volcano, a lopsided poster, and glue sticks that always disappeared when needed most. Esteban listened, truly listened, chiming in with questions, laughing at their jokes. Not performing, not overstepping, just showing up. It was a quiet miracle. After they finished their cones, Camille took the boys back to the cottage they were staying in for the weekend. Esteban walked with them to the door, unsure how long to linger. Camille unlocked it, holding it open with one hand. The boys ran inside, kicking off their sandals with wild precision. Esteban turned to her. "I'm heading back to the inn," he said. "Didn't want to assume." Camille looked at him, a mix of warmth and caution behind her eyes. "You did well today," she said. "Thank you for not trying too hard." "I've done enough trying the wrong way," he replied. She nodded, then hesitated. "They're going to ask who you are, what you are, soon. I'll follow your lead," he said. She didn't smile, but her expression softened. "They like you. That means something." He took a small step forward, not close enough to touch, but close enough for the tension to shift. "Do you?" he asked quietly. Camille blinked, caught off guard. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "But I don't not like you." Esteban chuckled under his breath. Progress. They stood in the quiet for a few seconds longer, the sound of waves in the distance, the laughter of the boys echoing faintly inside the cottage. Then Camille said, "You should get some rest." "Are you staying through the weekend?" he asked. "We are, then back to Charleston Monday morning." He nodded slowly. If I asked to come visit next weekend, would that be too much? Camille looked down at her keys, then back at him. Number. But don't show up with a suitcase. Noted. She opened the door a little wider. Good night, Esteban. He turned to leave, then paused. Camille, he said, glancing back. I meant what I said, about wanting to stay. I don't want to live in the past. But I'd give anything to be part of what's next. She didn't answer right away. Then, just before closing the door, she said, Then start by showing up for the little things, not the big ones. And with that, the door clicked shut, leaving Esteban on the porch, staring at the wood grain, the chipped paint on the edge, the light seeping from underneath like a heartbeat. He exhaled slowly, then walked into the night with a quiet kind of hope. Later, as Camille tucked the boys into bed, Aiden yawned and asked, Can we see him again tomorrow? Camille hesitated, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. We'll see. But in her heart, she already knew the answer. Camille stood at the kitchen sink of the cottage, rinsing sand from the boys' water bottles, her thoughts drifting as easily as the waves rolling beyond the window. The afternoon sun poured through the sheer curtains, painting long shadows across the tile. From the living room, she could hear Aiden and Noah arguing over who got to use the shiny blue crayon first in their sea creature drawings. I had it first, Noah. Only because you took it when I blinked. She smiled despite herself. Some things never changed. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Esteban, still thinking about those superhero ice creams. Can I bring real food? I make a decent omelet. Camille wiped her hands on a dish towel, staring at the screen. It would have been easy to ignore the message, to protect the space she'd worked so hard to build. But deep down, she knew what she was doing. She was letting the door stay cracked open. Just enough. Camille, if you burn the eggs, I'm taking the spatula. A reply came instantly. Esteban, fair. See you in 20? She tucked her phone into the side pocket of her apron and turned toward the living room. Boys, clean up time. We've got a guest coming. A chorus of groans followed. Do we have to? Only if you want dinner, she said, not breaking stride. 23 minutes later, Esteban knocked softly, holding a brown paper grocery bag in one arm and a carton of eggs in the other. Camille opened the door, arching a brow. You didn't trust my fridge? He stepped inside, scanning the cozy kitchen and the beach towels piled near the door. I trust your fridge. I don't trust expiration dates. She gave a soft laugh and stepped aside. Fair enough. The boys peeked around the corner. Esteban spotted them and held up the egg carton like a trophy. I come bearing the world's fluffiest omelets. Do they have cheese? Aiden asked suspiciously. Only the good kind, Esteban promised. That was enough. The boys vanished again, apparently satisfied that dinner was in capable hands. In the kitchen, Esteban pulled out ingredients: cheese, spinach, a small container of fresh herbs, while Camille set the table. It was quiet, but not in a tense way. More like a rhythm they used to know, slowly returning. I didn't expect you to text, she said after a moment, slicing strawberries for a side dish. I wasn't going to, he admitted. Then I kept thinking about what you said, showing up for the little things. Camille looked up. And a Wednesday night omelet counts? She asked, lips curving slightly. To me it counts more than most things I've done, he said without looking at her, cracking an egg one-handed. The silence between them was warm now, unspoken things sitting gently in the room. As the omelet sizzled on the stove, Esteban glanced toward the hallway. They're good kids, strong, smart. I see so much of you in them. Camille's voice was quiet. And you? He turned, surprised. She didn't elaborate. Just placed the strawberries in a bowl and carried it to the table. When the food was ready, they all sat around the small table, mismatched chairs pulled in from every corner of the cottage. Esteban served the boys first, then Camille, then himself. They ate, and for a few minutes it felt like nothing had ever broken, like they'd always been like this. Then Noah, mid-bite, looked at Esteban and asked, "Are you going to come to our school one day?" Camille tensed slightly. Esteban set his fork down, choosing his words carefully. "If it's okay with your mom, I'd like to." Aiden nodded, licking cheese from his fingers. "You could come to Parent Day." Noah added, "You have to tell a story about your job." Camille raised her eyebrows. "You'd better find a version of wealth management that sounds exciting to 7-year-olds. Esteban grinned. "I'll work on my pirate voice." The boys laughed, and just like that, the tension faded again. After dinner, Camille started clearing plates, but Esteban stood. "I've got this," he said, gently taking the dishes from her hand. She hesitated, then let go. She watched as he moved through the space, not like a stranger, but not yet like he belonged either. Somewhere in between. The kind of in-between that made your heart ache. When the boys were tucked into bed, after 3 stories, a pillow fort negotiation, and a spilled glass of water, Camille stepped onto the porch. Esteban joined her a few minutes later, hands in his pockets. The night was quiet. Crickets hummed. The sea breeze whispered through the dunes. Camille leaned against the porch railing, her voice soft. "They asked about you again after story time last night. They don't understand why you weren't there before, why you suddenly are now." Esteban nodded slowly. "What did you say?" "That sometimes people make mistakes, that they don't always know how to fix them right away." He looked at her. "Is that what you believe?" She paused. "I'm trying to." He stepped closer, just enough to be near her but not touching. "I meant what I said. I don't want to live in the past," he murmured. "But I can't pretend it didn't happen either." Camille turned to face him. "I don't want apologies anymore, Esteban. I want consistency." He met her gaze. "Then I'll keep showing up. You don't have to open the door all the way. Just don't close it." A long silence settled. Camille glanced toward the quiet house. "You should go," she whispered. "I know." He didn't ask for anything else. He didn't reach for her hand. He just nodded, stepped off the porch, and walked into the night, the sound of his footsteps soft against the wooden planks. Inside, Camille leaned against the door after closing it, eyes shut. And for the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of what came next. She was only afraid of hoping too much. Monday morning in Charleston arrived with golden light filtering through the kitchen window, soft and hopeful, the kind of light that almost made you forget life was full of unfinished things. Camille stood barefoot by the stove, flipping pancakes while Aiden and Noah danced around the breakfast table, still riding the high of their beach weekend. "Mom, Esteban said he might come visit next weekend again," Aiden announced through a mouthful of banana. Noah chimed in, "Can he bring that spaceship book again?" Camille tried to hide her smile, but it tugged at the corners of her lips anyway. "If he comes, you can ask him yourself." They didn't know how much that small word, "if," held. She turned off the stove, plated the pancakes, and sat with them, her mind already racing ahead to the long list waiting at the bakery. Deliveries, menu updates, payroll. And then there was the lease. Her smile faded. The bakery's landlord had left her a voicemail on Friday, and she hadn't had the nerve to return it yet. She already knew what it was about. His tone was too polite, too final. The rent was increasing again, and unless something changed, she'd have to either find a new location or close up shop by the end of the season. The thought sat in her chest like a stone. After breakfast, She dropped the boys at school and walked through the quiet streets of downtown Charleston, her fingers wrapped tightly around the strap of her purse. The bakery was nestled on the corner of a tree-lined street, framed by flower boxes Camille replanted herself every season. Inside, the air smelled like cinnamon and flour and early mornings. It was hers, all of it. Built from scratch, from pain, from resilience. But even resilience had its limits. She had just stepped behind the counter when Simone swept in, sunglasses perched on her head, her tote bag swinging like a pendulum. "Good, you're here," Simone said, her voice lower than usual. "I saw your lights on. We need to talk." Camille blinked. "Can it wait?" "I haven't even looked at the books yet. Number it can't." Camille motioned toward the back, where they could speak in private. The tiny office was filled with boxes of baking supplies and receipts, an organized chaos that Camille had come to depend on. Simone closed the door behind them. "The landlord was at Marlowe's last night," she said. Camille's stomach turned. "What did he say?" "That he's selling the building. Already has a buyer lined up. You've got 60 days, Cam." Camille leaned against the wall, her breath leaving her in one hard exhale. 60 days, that's nothing," Simone said softly. "I know." Camille rubbed her temples. "I can't relocate the bakery in 60 days. I can't even find a new space that fast. And the boys, school, routine. It's too much." Simone reached into her tote and handed her a business card. "There's a space near the wharf. Smaller, but newer. Good foot traffic." Camille stared at it. "I can't afford this." "You might have help," Simone said gently. "If you asked." The meaning in her voice was clear. Camille met her eyes. "No," she said. "I'm not dragging Esteban into this. He's already doing more than I ever expected. I won't let him think he can just come in and fix everything with a checkbook." "Maybe he's not trying to fix it," Simone said. "Maybe he just wants to stand next to you while you do." Camille shook her head. "If I let him help with the bakery, I won't know where his support ends and where mine begins. I've spent 7 years keeping those lines clear." Simone reached across the table, her hand warm over Camille's. "Maybe it's time to draw new lines." The door creaked open, and Lila from the front counter poked her head in. "Camille, there's someone asking for you." Camille stood, smoothing her apron. "Customer?" "No," Lila said, her expression unreadable. "It's him." Camille stepped out into the shop and found Esteban standing near the coffee display, holding a to-go cup and a paper bag with one of her cinnamon rolls inside. "Morning," he said. "Hope this isn't too soon." Her voice was cautious. "What brings you here?" "I had meetings downtown," he said. "But really, I just wanted to see you, and the bakery. You talk about it like it's part of you." She glanced down at his coffee cup. "Careful. That much sugar might make you sentimental." He smiled. "Too late." She didn't laugh, not yet. He saw the tension behind her eyes. Something's wrong. She didn't respond right away, just looked around the space like she was trying to memorize it in case it disappeared. "This place is in trouble," she said finally, "and I'm not sure I can save it this time." Esteban set down his coffee and stepped closer. "What do you need?" "That's not the question," Camille said, her voice tighter now. "The question is what I'm willing to accept. And I don't want to be the woman who leans on the man who left her just because he's back." Esteban's face shifted, the weight of her words clear. "I'm not trying to rescue you," he said. "I'm trying to show up. There's a difference." She crossed her arms, as if trying to hold herself together. "But where does it end, Esteban? First it's dinner, then school, then bedtime stories, then my business? What happens when you change your mind again? I won't. You did before. I was a different man then." "Prove it," she whispered. without taking control, without fixing it all. Esteban's voice softened. Okay, tell me how to help. On your terms. Camille hesitated. Then, almost reluctantly, she handed him the business card Simone had given her. I'm meeting with the broker tomorrow. You can come, but you don't say a word unless I ask. He nodded. Deal. And Esteban? Yeah? If I see even a hint of a wire transfer, I swear I'll... He held up his hands. No wires, no transfers, no power plays. Camille gave him one last searching look, then turned and walked back toward the kitchen. He stood in the middle of the bakery, letting the moment settle like flour in the air. For the first time, she hadn't shut him out, and that felt like the start of something worth building, even if it wasn't his name on the door. Camille stood outside the small commercial space near the wharf, squinting against the afternoon sun as she waited for the broker. The building was modest, freshly painted, a wraparound awning, and tall windows facing the harbor. It wasn't charming like her current bakery. It didn't have stories baked into the walls, but it had potential, a pulse, a future maybe. Esteban pulled up in his car just as she was slipping her phone back into her purse. He stepped out without a word, jacket tossed over his shoulder, looking calm but not overly polished. He was reading the moment, like he'd learned that being quiet sometimes spoke louder than trying too hard. Hey, he said. She nodded. You're on mute today, remember? He mimed, zipping his lips, then motioned toward the door. The broker arrived 2 minutes later, a woman in her 50s with a clipboard, keys, and a practiced smile. She walked them through the space, pointing out floor plans, utility upgrades, and local traffic numbers. Camille asked sharp questions. Esteban stayed silent. Inside, the space felt empty but not cold. The air smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. This wall here could be a retail shelf, the broker explained. And there's plumbing for a second sink if you're expanding your prep line. Camille ran her fingers over the window ledge. The morning light would hit just right here. She imagined the smell of rising dough filling the space. Laughter. Music. Her boys doing homework at the corner table while she prepped pastries. Still, her voice stayed grounded. How flexible is the lease? We're motivated, the broker said. Owner's local, loves small business stories, especially ones with heart. Camille glanced at Esteban. He looked away, like he didn't want her to think his presence was influencing the pitch. After the broker left, Camille and Esteban stood alone in the middle of the empty floor. Well? He asked. It's not the bakery I dreamed of, she said, but dreams change. Sometimes they grow, he offered. She sighed. It's scary. Starting over. I've done it before, but this time, I don't want to do it alone. Esteban's brows lifted. She caught herself. I didn't mean, you can mean it, he said softly. I'd like to be part of the next version, in whatever way you'll let me. She looked at him, emotion rising slowly in her chest. I'm not asking for you to carry it, just to walk beside it. That's all I've wanted. They stepped out into the light, the door clicking closed behind them. The conversation hung between them like a curtain waiting to be pulled back. But it wasn't time yet. It came that night. Camille was in the kitchen, prepping dinner, when she heard Aiden cough. Not once, not twice, but deep, hollow, relentless. Followed by silence, then a thud. Her heart stopped. She dropped the knife and ran. Noah stood frozen in the hallway, eyes wide. He fell. Mom, he fell. Aiden sat against the wall, pale and dizzy, holding his head with one hand. Camille knelt, panic threatening to overtake her calm. Aiden, look at me. Can you hear me? He nodded faintly, but his breathing was shallow. His cheeks were flushed with heat, and his forehead burned beneath her palm. Noah hovered beside her, Is he gonna throw up? Camille swallowed hard. Grab your shoes. She bundled Aiden into her arms, whispering to him the entire time, soothing him through his fevered haze. He was hot, limp, mumbling about stars and a dragon that wouldn't let him sleep. She was nearly out the door when she remembered. Her car was still in the shop. The walk-in appointment she never rescheduled. Noah, stay close, she said, fumbling for her phone. She called Esteban. He answered on the second ring. Camille? I need your help. It's Aiden. He's burning up and my car. I'm on my way. He didn't ask questions, didn't hesitate. Within 6 minutes he was outside, engine running. Camille carried Aiden into the passenger seat, her arms trembling, heart racing. Esteban drove with steady urgency, checking the rearview mirror every few seconds. Camille held Aiden close in the back seat, whispering his name, praying the hospital wasn't far enough to feel like forever. At the urgent care clinic, Esteban stayed quiet but close, never leaving their side. Camille filled out forms with one hand while clutching Aiden's with the other. After what felt like hours, but was only 47 minutes, a nurse returned with a clipboard and a calm voice. Viral fever, she said. Dehydrated and exhausted, but not serious. We've given him fluids. He'll need rest, lots of water, and to be watched closely overnight. Camille exhaled so hard she nearly collapsed. Esteban guided her to a chair. You okay? No, she whispered, her voice cracked. But I will be. Aiden was sleeping when they wheeled him out. Esteban carried him to the car without asking. Noah clung to Camille's side, sleepy but worried. At the cottage, Esteban helped her get Aiden into bed, tucking him in with a quiet gentleness that caught Camille completely off guard. When it was over, when the silence returned and both boys were asleep, Camille walked out onto the porch, arms wrapped around herself. Esteban joined her a moment later, hands in his pockets, the moonlight catching the strain on his face. You didn't have to come, she said. I did, he replied. You called. They stood in silence. Then she turned toward him, her eyes tired but clear. That's what I meant, she whispered. About showing up when it's hard, not when it's easy, not when it's a picnic or a pancake morning, but when it's 8 p.m. and the world's spinning and I don't know what to do. Esteban didn't speak. He just reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. The morning light filtered through the cottage blinds like a gentle promise. Soft, forgiving. Camille stood at the stove, stirring oatmeal while glancing down the hallway every few seconds. The night had been long. Aiden's fever had finally broken just after 3 a.m., and now he was resting, curled up with his favorite blanket, breathing steady. She hadn't planned on Esteban still being here, but he was. He'd fallen asleep, sitting upright in the armchair, shoes still on, chin tilted toward his chest. At some point during the night, she'd covered him with a throw blanket and turned off the overhead light. Now the kettle whistled. She turned it off, reached for 2 mugs, and hesitated. 2. She didn't think twice anymore. A soft rustle behind her. Esteban stretched, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He stood, still disoriented, until he caught her watching him. Morning, he said, voice hoarse. You snore, she replied, sliding a mug toward him. I do not. You do, she said, almost smiling. Just enough to be annoying, but not enough to make me shove you. I'll take that as progress. They stood quietly, sipping their tea, neither rushing the moment. Thank you, Camille said finally, for last night, for not asking what you were walking into, for just being here. Esteban set down his cup, leaning against the counter. That's the only thing I'm sure about anymore. Being here. Camille looked at him, her voice cautious. You still haven't told me about London. He nodded slowly, his eyes dropping to the floor. Because I made a decision, and I wanted to be sure before I said it. She stayed silent, letting the weight settle. I turned it down, he said. The offer, the position, the expansion, all of it. Camille blinked. What? I told Hamza yesterday, Esteban continued. We're dissolving the international deal. I'll stay here. Or maybe not at Whitmore Capital at all. I've been thinking about stepping away for a while. Her breath caught. You're walking away from the company you built? He looked up at her. I built something that made me lonely, that let me forget what mattered, and I won't keep choosing it. Not over this, not over you, or them. Camille's back straightened, unsure whether to exhale or brace herself. You think that fixes things? She asked, not unkindly. That it redeems the past? No, he said quietly, but it honors what I can do now. A pause. And what do you want to do now, Esteban? He stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the intention in every word. I want to build something with you, something real. I want to be a father to my boys. Not just when it's convenient. I want to be there for school nights, grocery runs, tantrums, and birthdays. And I want to support you in a way that never makes you feel small. Her throat tightened. She turned to the sink, pretending to rinse a spoon that didn't need it. And what happens when it gets hard? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. When it's messy, when I push back, when the bakery fails, when I cry for no reason. Esteban walked up behind her slowly. Then I stay, he said. The silence swelled between them, not awkward, not tense, just full. Full of the things neither had known how to ask for 7 years ago. Then from the hallway, a quiet voice. Mom. Camille turned instantly. Aiden? He stood in the doorway bleary-eyed, blanket trailing behind him. Camille crossed the kitchen in 2 steps, kneeling down. Hey, baby, you're okay, she whispered, brushing his hair back. Had a dream about the turtles, he mumbled. They were flying. Esteban smiled, crouching beside them. That sounds like the best kind of dream. Aiden looked at him. You were there too, but you weren't a turtle. You were just... here. Camille looked up at Esteban. Their eyes met. I'm glad I was, he said softly. Aiden yawned and leaned into Camille's shoulder. She wrapped her arms around him and stood. Come on, let's get you settled. Esteban followed them down the hall, stopping at the door to Aiden's room. Camille laid her son back in bed, adjusting the blanket. She turned to leave, and paused. Esteban was still standing there. You okay? She asked. He looked into the room, at the little boy sleeping, his chest rising and falling, and nodded. I think this is the first time in my life I've felt exactly where I'm supposed to be. Camille's lips parted, but no words came. She stepped into the hallway, pulled the door gently behind her, and whispered, Then stay. The scent of cinnamon rolls filled the air again. Not the commercial kind, Camille's kind. The kind that wrapped around you like a memory you didn't know you missed. The new bakery space near the wharf had been scrubbed, painted, and blessed with the smell of something alive. She hadn't opened the doors to customers yet, not officially. But today was a soft start, and the only people inside were the ones who'd watched her rebuild every step of the way. Simone leaned against the counter with her ever-present coffee. I gotta admit, she said, surveying the room, this place doesn't have the same magic as the old one. Camille glanced at her. Not yet, Simone added, smirking, but give it time. Camille laughed quietly and wiped her hands on her apron. She hadn't stopped moving for hours, but something about the repetition, the kneading, the rolling, The way the oven hummed made her feel grounded again, whole. The front door chimed and Esteban stepped in, hair slightly windblown, holding a cardboard tray of drinks. "I brought backup," he said. Camille tilted her head. "Are you bribing the staff again?" "No," he replied, "just trying to earn my spot in the rotation." Simone grinned. "You might make the cut. Jury's still out." Esteban handed Camille a tea, extra honey, no lemon. She didn't need to ask how he remembered. She knew. The boys arrived a few minutes later, backpacks still slung over their shoulders, voices echoing like a small parade. Aiden ran straight to the corner table, the one Camille had made sure stayed near the window. Noah followed, dropping his things and asking if he could have just one sample. Camille raised an eyebrow. "After dinner." They groaned in unison. Esteban walked over and sat with them, helping them unpack their notebooks while Camille watched from the counter, her arms crossed over her chest, the hint of a smile at the edges. Simone slid closer to her. "You're letting him in." Camille didn't deny it. Simone nudged her. So what? So when are you going to stop pretending you're not already in love with the man?" Camille's eyes dropped to the counter. "I don't know if love is what it used to be." "It's not," Simone said. "That's what makes it better." Later that evening, after Simone left and the boys had been picked up for a sleepover at their friend's house, Camille and Esteban stayed behind to clean up. She was wiping down the counter when he spoke. "Can I show you something?" She turned, cloth still in hand. "What?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn edges, familiar colors. He handed it to her. It was the crayon drawing, the one she hadn't even realized was missing. 4 stick figures, 2 small, one with a long braid, one taller, marked with a big D. "I found it at the cottage," he said, "tucked in the picnic basket." Camille stared at the drawing. "They drew you in," she whispered. "They already had," Esteban said, "even before I earned it." She looked up at him then, and the quiet between them didn't need to be filled. "I'm not afraid of the work," he added, "of the mess, the mornings, the interruptions, the long nights. I'm not afraid of doing this slowly." Camille reached up, brushing flour from her cheek. "That's good, because there's no shortcut here." "I'm not looking for one." He stepped closer, just close enough. Her voice softened. "You're really not going back?" Esteban shook his head. "Not to who I was, not to that life. This is the only thing that feels honest." Camille looked down at the drawing again, then folded it carefully and set it beside the register. She turned back to him, breathing in the scent of cinnamon and sugar and something unspoken. "You're doing fine," she said. "Better than I ever expected." Esteban leaned against the counter beside her, their arms barely touching. "I'm still not asking for anything," he said quietly. "Not yet." "I know," she replied. "But if I were," he added, eyes meeting hers, "it wouldn't be to go back. It'd be to build forward. With you." Camille felt it then. The slow release of tension she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Years of holding her breath, of bracing for the next goodbye. She didn't move, didn't speak, but she didn't look away. The overhead lights dimmed on their own timer, casting the bakery in a warm hush. Outside, the harbor lights flickered like stars waiting for a story to end the night. Camille whispered, "You're already part of it." Esteban smiled, eyes never leaving hers. "Then I'll keep showing up. Until the story writes itself." She didn't stop him when he reached for her hand, and this time, she didn't let go. The sun had just begun its descent over Charleston when Esteban pulled up to Camille's place, the sky bleeding into soft amber and dusty pink. The street was quiet, the kind of quiet that made the day feel like it was waiting for something important to happen. He stepped out of the car slowly, carrying nothing but a folded blanket under one arm and something small tucked in his pocket. Inside, Camille was finishing up dinner. The boys were out. Simone had taken them for a movie night so she and Esteban could talk. Except Simone didn't say talk. She said, "Whatever you're both dancing around, figure it out already. The rest of us are exhausted." Camille looked up as Esteban walked in. No knock, just a gentle opening of the door, like someone who'd learned exactly how much space he was allowed. "You're right on time," she said, stirring something on the stove. He smiled. "You sound surprised." "Only a little." He walked over and set the blanket on the counter. "How do you feel about dinner on the porch?" She raised an eyebrow. "Did you just invite yourself to my back steps?" "Not just me," he said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a folded sheet of paper. It was wrinkled from the car ride, but carefully pressed. He handed it to her. Camille unfolded it, then paused. It was a list, a handwritten list in his unmistakable print. "Things I want, if you'll have me." She read silently. 1 Wednesday night dinner a week. No phones, just us. Permission to be the one who picks them up from school sometimes. To dance with you in the kitchen, even when there's no music. To fix the squeaky cabinet door without being asked. To be your calm when you're tired and your laughter when you forget how. To never, ever leave again. Camille stared at the page for a long time, then folded it once, then again, pressing it to her chest. "Why now?" she asked, her voice a whisper. "Why tonight?" Esteban reached for her hand. "Because I've had a lot of moments with you lately, small, quiet, beautiful ones, and every single one has made me want the next. I don't want a grand gesture, Cam. I just want to stay in your life in ways that actually mean something." She studied him, trying to find any sign of performance. There wasn't any. "I'm not ready for vows," she said softly. "I'm not even sure what comes next." "I'm not asking for vows," he replied. "I'm just asking to stay until you're sure. To keep showing up." Camille was quiet for a moment, then reached into a drawer and pulled out 4 dinner plates. She set them down one by one on the counter. The last one she placed across from hers. Esteban watched, chest tightening. "That for me?" "No," she said, looking up at him. "It's for us." They ate on the porch under the soft buzz of the porch light, sharing stories between bites, passing the wine like they'd done it 1,000 times. She told him about the first week after the boys were born, how she didn't sleep, how she was terrified of breaking them, how she once cried for an hour because the dryer stopped working. He listened, not to respond, but to carry the weight she'd held alone. Later, as the plate sat empty beside them and the stars blinked to life overhead, Camille leaned back against the railing, her fingers trailing along the rim of her glass. "I've never let anyone this far in," she admitted. "Not even close." "I know," Esteban said quietly. "I don't know what that means yet." "It means I'll be careful with you." She turned her face toward him, the porch light catching the curve of her jaw. "And when the boys ask if this is forever?" He reached over, his fingers brushing hers. "I'll tell them I hope so. But more importantly, I'll show them what it looks like to choose someone. Every day." Camille didn't cry. But something in her loosened. The part of her that had been holding back, holding it all together for years, finally exhaled. "Esteban?" "Yeah?" "Ask me again." He looked at her, brow furrowing. "Ask you what?" "Whatever it was you wanted to ask." Esteban leaned forward, pulled the list from his pocket again, unfolded it, and looked down at it like it held the key to everything. Then he met her eyes. "Can I stay?" Camille reached for his hand, her grip firm and sure. "You already are." A warm breeze stirred the Spanish moss that hung from the oak trees overhead, casting soft shadows across the quiet field behind the bakery. Camille stood at the edge of the clearing, her fingers clutching the hem of her dress. Not out of nerves, but to anchor herself in a moment that already felt like a memory. There were no rows of white chairs, no flower arch, no planner whispering orders into a headset, just a few picnic blankets, a string of lanterns, and the smell of cinnamon and sea air. Aiden and Noah were barefoot, racing each other through the grass, dress shirts untucked, ties already forgotten. Simone sat with them, laughing as she tried to braid a piece of Noah's hair he insisted was finally long enough. Esteban waited by the bench beneath the oak, the same one Camille had once sat on during her break between batches, the one she'd told him about when she first opened the old bakery. The wood had faded since then, but they'd never repainted it. That was the point. Camille stepped forward, slowly, the soles of her sandals whispering through the grass. She wore no veil, no lace, just a soft, pale blue dress and the faint scent of vanilla. Esteban turned when he heard her approach. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then softly, "You came. You didn't think I would?" "I hoped," he said. "But that's different." She stepped closer. "You're different." He smiled, still learning how to stay. "You're doing just fine." Pastor Lee waited quietly beside them, one hand resting over the small book he carried, the other gently patting Esteban's shoulder as if to remind him this was real and happening and earned. Camille looked around. "Is this really how you imagined it?" Esteban nodded. "No vows, no stage, just here." She smiled. "Then let's not make a speech out of it." "No speeches," he agreed. "Just this." Pastor Lee began to speak, his voice low and warm like a bedtime story. "Marriage isn't always about ceremony. It's about commitment, repeated, steady, honest. It's about small things, showing up, listening, offering your last bite of dessert even when you don't want to. Holding space when words fall short. Today is not the beginning of love. It's the honoring of what's already grown." Aiden interrupted from the side. "Are we allowed to say anything?" Camille laughed. "Only if it's important." Aiden stood up, brushing grass from his pants. "I think Esteban should get to have a last name like ours." Esteban tilted his head. "You mean you want me to change my name?" Noah stood too. "No, I mean we should all have the same name. Like a team." Camille crouched slightly. "You two are already our whole team." Aiden folded his arms. "Then it should be official." Pastor Lee chuckled. "Well, I suppose this is the most honest wedding I've ever been part of." Esteban reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ring. Not flashy. Simple. Matte gold. He held it out. "Camille Hart," he said softly. "You don't need this to know how I feel, but I'd like to give it to you anyway, as a promise, to keep choosing this, every single day." She took it, sliding it onto her finger without hesitation. "I'll keep choosing you too, but if you ever forget to fold the laundry, I'm going to write a poem about it and pin it to the fridge." "Fair," he said. Pastor Lee smiled. "Then by the power invested in me, not by any institution but by love and effort and faith, I say what you've already been living. You are family." The boys rushed forward as if they were the final act, flinging their arms around Camille and Esteban at the same time. It wasn't a picture-perfect moment. It was messy, loud, beautiful. Later, as dusk settled and the lanterns flickered above them, Camille sat on the old bench beside Esteban, the boys snoring softly in a blanket pile at their feet. "You know what's strange?" she whispered. "What?" "This wasn't the wedding I dreamed of when I was 20, but it's the only one I would have said yes to now." Esteban looked at her, the light catching the curve of her smile. Good, he said, because it's the only one I ever wanted. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and he didn't say a word, just rested his cheek against her hair and let the moment stretch. Quiet. Full. Somewhere in the distance, Simone lit a sparkler and waved it like a firefly, laughing with a kind of joy that only came when you knew the people you loved had finally found home. And beneath the soft hum of the night, Camille whispered to herself, not because anyone needed to hear it, but because it was true. He stayed. A year later, the bakery window glowed with morning light, the kind that spilled across countertops and made flour dust sparkle mid-air. The bell over the door rang softly as a customer entered, but Camille didn't look up right away. She was rolling dough, humming under her breath to an old Ella Fitzgerald tune playing low on the speaker. "Mom," Aiden called from the front. "Mrs. Peters says we're out of blueberry muffins." Camille wiped her hands on her apron and stepped out from behind the counter. "We've got more cooling in the back. Tell her 3 minutes and I'll bring them over with a warm smile." Aiden smirked. "You always say that." "Because it works." She tousled his hair and walked past the chalkboard menu toward the back kitchen. Esteban met her halfway, already holding the tray she needed. "They're perfect," he said, passing them to her. "Golden tops, still soft." Camille smiled. "You know you're not technically on the clock. I like to hover near ovens. And you?" She leaned in, just enough for a kiss that lingered longer than it needed to. "Where's Noah?" she asked as she moved past him. "Out back. He's drawing spaceships on the delivery boxes again." Camille laughed under her breath. "That boy's going to design a bakery that launches into orbit one day." Esteban followed her to the front, where she delivered the muffins to a grateful customer, then poured herself a cup of tea and sat at the small table near the window, the one she once called her thinking chair. The bench outside that window had been freshly painted, but they'd left one corner chipped on purpose. A reminder. From the speaker, Ella faded into Norah Jones. A quiet kind of Sunday. Esteban sat across from her, reaching for her hand over the table. "You know what today is?" he asked. She took a sip of tea. "Aside from muffin madness?" "1 year," he said, "since you said yes." Camille tilted her head. "Did I? I remember more of a you're already here situation." "Same difference." He grinned. "Still counts." She looked out the window, watching the boys chase each other across the sidewalk. Noah's shoelaces flapping wildly, Aiden yelling something about secret codes. "Does it ever hit you?" she asked. "What?" "That none of this was the plan." Esteban's voice dropped to something soft. "It's better than the plan." Camille nodded slowly. "I used to think love had to be grand, that it was made of candles and big gestures, but it's this, isn't it?" She turned back to him. "Warm muffins, homework help, holding hands in the middle of dishes and grocery lists." Esteban smiled, thumb brushing across the back of her hand. "Love is ordinary things done on purpose." Outside, the boys paused at the bench and sat down, just for a moment, sweaty and laughing. Aiden pulled something from his pocket and handed it to Noah, a folded drawing. 4 stick figures, crayon hearts above their heads. Camille's breath caught in her throat. Esteban leaned over to look. "Looks familiar." "They never stopped drawing us," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "even when it wasn't official." Esteban watched their sons. Kids know what's real. The bell above the door rang again, and the morning crowd returned, but neither of them moved right away. They sat at the little table, fingers still entwined, hearts settled in the quiet that comes only after the storm. Camille looked at him, really looked, then whispered, "I'm glad you walked into the wrong wedding." Esteban met her gaze. "No," he said gently. I think I walked into the right life. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thoughts matter to me either way.